Okay, thank you everyone for being at today's work session. We are going to talk about bonds today, transportation and affordable housing. We will start with the transportation bond, and I just want to mention that Mayor Pro Tem Branch is absent and excused today in tonight's meeting as well. Hey.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Kenneth Ritchie with Transportation, here with our delivery partners from Engineering Services to provide an update on the transportation bond, the history, current status, and looking forward.
You're looking very spiffy.
I appreciate it.
Today.
I try to. So for this agenda, we'll kind of go over some project origins. We'll do an overview of bonds. Some of the breakdowns from some of our past bonds. We'll do kind of a little in-depth review of the 2017 bond in terms of updates, looking at programs, projects, and then the current funding status. And then at the end, we'll kind of talk looking forward. So projects originate from our comprehensive plan, area corridor plans, and resident council requests. These projects are scored based off a number of metrics that include safety, congestion, transit, bike ped demand, and economic development. These really start to put together the list that has historically been put in front of council for consideration as it relates to bond packages. But certainly as it relates to the bond package that is put out to the voters, there is a legislative or kind of a council priority discussion that happens with that starts to set what that program will be. And then once those are approved, those projects and the funding are allocated annually through the CIP budget review process. So this is a graph kind of looking at our last four bonds. 2005 was a $60 million bond. 2011 was a $40 million bond. That was actually part of a $56 million bond package that also had $16 million for affordable housing in it. 2013 was a $75 million bond, and then most recent 2017 was $206.7 million. When you look at the breakdown of identified projects to program areas with the funding, it averages it out to about 70% of the funding is for specified projects, 30% is what we call program areas, sidewalks, bikeway implementation, those types of program areas. So looking at our capital budget funding, it really is made up of three different funding sources. There's bonds, which are our kind of overwhelming percentage of funding our transportation infrastructure, PAYGO or cash, and then grants. The proportion of these is approximately 60% for bonds, 25% for our PAYGO cash, and then 15% for grants. And this example is coming off of our 17 bond and how our CIP is put together with those projects today. So now we'll kind of discuss some of the project drivers, and we're going to look at this in kind of two areas. It'll be schedule and cost. So looking at some of our schedule drivers as it relates to project delivery, project scoping, one area, the more refined we can get the project up front, certainly the more expeditious we can be with the delivery. As the scope could change throughout the process, that can have implications to our schedule. Public engagement and feedback. Certainly, as we go through a lot of these corridor studies, that really is intended to be the most rigorous engagement we've got so that we can start to set the vision and the plan for what we want to deliver. As we go through the process, certainly we get feedback from the community. The council gets feedback from the community on things they may like or may not like with those projects. How that feedback is integrated into our projects can impact schedules as well. External coordination and permitting, much like we have plans that come through the city and go through our regulatory process, we are required to go through regulatory processes with the state and other agencies. We coordinate with NCDOT heavily on a lot of their corridors. From a stormwater and environmental standpoint, we have to go through DEQ. We have to coordinate with our utilities, with Duke Energy being one of our largest coordination efforts from a utility standpoint, and that can have impacts on our schedules when it comes to trying to meet those regulatory requirements. Property acquisition, which certainly has become one of the bigger items as it relates to schedule and cost, and we'll talk through kind of both of those on these two slides. But the number of properties that become impacted over time means there's that many more people and properties that we have to negotiate with for property. That can extend out the time just based off the resources that we have to try and work that forward. And then certainly trying to work towards a settlement and not having to use our power of eminent domain if we don't have to. And so that can also impact our schedule. And then staff resources. And this is both internal staff resources and our ability to oversee. Staff's going to have a capacity in terms of number of projects they can oversee effectively at any one time. This also plays into the market with our contractors and our consultants, because certainly we're seeing that more strained within the market today as it relates to availability of resources, and that has driven the number of bidders we've seen in some regards, just because with the market today, there's a lot of construction going on in this area, from private development to a lot of our state-level highway projects that does have an impact on what we see from a response standpoint when we put projects out to bid. So then looking at cost drivers, one of the big ones that I think we have talked about on multiple occasions is real estate. We have seen the real estate prices escalate to an extent that I don't think any of us could have foreseen, and has put a big strain on our project budgets. And so certainly that, and if we do get to the point of having to leverage our eminent domain authority, there can be additional cost that then comes in with that as well. So the real estate really has become a big element of cost for our projects. The materials market, we have seen a fluctuation as it relates to materials. Certainly we've seen an increase in steel and some other elements. The other piece with this too has become availability of the materials and supply chain. That has also impacted our schedule as much as it has impacted our cost. And trying to find the most available resource for those can sometimes cost more, and in some cases substantially more. And then the labor market with our vendors, given some of the saturation we have in this area as it relates to construction projects, we are seeing fewer responses to our bids from what we saw 3 or 4 years ago, which has impacted our pricing because they kind of know if it's the fewer we've got, probably the less competitive the bidding is going to be. So now we'll take a look at the 2017 bond package. So this is an overview of the bond programs. And as I spoke to, this is roughly about 30% of the 2017 bond funding. With a lot of these program areas, the NCDOT project partnerships, that is a program area where, as you will see, municipal agreements come forward where we're partnering with the state to look at betterments associated with some of their projects. That's what that bucket's for. I would say within the next year, all of that money will be expensed. We're working through some municipal agreements that we will have to make good on here in the coming year. Complete Streets implementation is one of the newer program areas. That took 3 program areas, which are streetscapes, neighborhood small area plans, and I think there was a larger corridor plan bucket, and brought them into one. This is a bucket that kind of looks at different corridor areas, looking at safety improvements, some level of streetscape improvements. That one certainly has some more spin down to do, but certainly is in the works. Corridor sidewalk improvements, that's our larger corridor projects. We anticipate probably within the next 6 months that we will have those funds completely encumbered. We've got one more group of corridor sidewalks that we'll see going to bid in that time. Transit supporting projects, which helps with a lot of our shelters and supporting and some of the connectivity to that. Our neighborhood sidewalk petitions, this is an area that we've discussed with council previously. There was money that was appropriated from capital reserves to help offset a gap in both the street petitions and the street petitions programs. That's because the bond funded program had been overcommitted at that point. So certainly we anticipate that bucket's going to be spent down here in the coming months. Neighborhood traffic management, our traffic calming program. We have our next group that we're looking at starting construction in the spring, and likely, hopefully, another batch that will be going out later next year. That likely will finish out the traffic calming money that we have from the 17 bond. Our P3 and cost sharing fund, which allows us to partner with developers. Most recently, we had a cost share agreement before you for the Pines at Peach Road affordable housing project. That program is fully committed with that cost share agreement from Pines at Peach Road. And then Safe Routes to School, we will be looking at that program probably being completely finished here with some street signal installations that will be going on with some schools here in the coming months. And then looking at our 2017 bond projects, I'll kind of put these into groups. We've got those that I would consider complete or under construction, which is Tryon Road C, that completed last year. Pool Road is currently under construction, I believe anticipated to complete later this year, early next. Atlantic Avenue, and then Rock Quarry Road A, that project will be delivered by NCDOT. We have confirmed with them that they're anticipating that project to start construction before the end of the year. So we will see that one breaking ground. Our next group is these. When I say final permitting, these are kind of hitting those final steps, and then we'll see those bidding. We're anticipating these bidding probably within the next 3 to 6 months. That's Old Wake Forest Road, Dixie Forest, which those two are paired together as one project. Barwell Road South, Blue Ridge Road widening, and as a reminder there, that project has been split into two. There's a Blue Ridge Road South, which that is going to be fully bond funded, and then we've got a Blue Ridge Road North that has a greenway pedestrian underpass on it that is grant funded. That one's a little bit further behind, but the Blue Ridge Road South project will be bidding in that 3 to 6 month range. And then Carolina Pines Avenue is another one that's in that final permitting stage. And then those that are in design is Six Forks Road, which we'll be discussing more at an upcoming meeting. And then our Blunt Person two-way conversion and Wake Forest Road roundabout. Those two projects have been bundled together for proximity for project delivery. And then some previous actions made by previous councils as it relates to 2017 bond projects and trying to close projected gaps. The Leesville Road B project, that was canceled, I believe, in 2020. Trawick Road West, the Marsh Creek Road project, and the West Street Extension South, construction funding was deferred for those, so those will be up for consideration for construction funding, but we have retained design money, and those are continuing to try and move forward. So looking at the current status of the funding as it relates to the 2017 bond, the blue box is the total allocation from that bond, which is $206.7 million. The yellow box is our unencumbered budget today, which is $109.6 million. The orange box represents total expenditures, so cash that has moved out, which is $64.1 million. And then encumbrances, those are monies that we have designated against a contract but have not been expensed yet. That's $33 million. As we come to the next slide, I do want to focus on just kind of remind you of this yellow box with that $109 million, because I think we'll talk to where some of that money is and the path forward for some of that. So moving forward from the 17 bond, as I alluded to, we'll be bringing the Six Forks Road project, an update on that to you next week at the council meeting. That represents today roughly $42 million of unencumbered bond funding with that project. And then the upcoming construction bidding schedule, we have Barwell Road South, the Blue Ridge Road South, and Carolina Pines Avenue that we're anticipating those bids being released to the public this fall. And Old Wake Forest Road, Dixie Forest Road, probably in the early 2024. That represents about $30 million of unencumbered bond funding that certainly we will hopefully see coming before you for contract awards in the coming months. And then with regards to that bond expenditure, we are looking at trying to come back to you in the spring to provide an update on exactly where we are after these projects move forward and some of the programmatic projects in anticipation of discussions as it could relate to a future bond. And then looking at considerations for future bond planning, and we've got this kind of broke up into two buckets, which is logistics and projects. One is timing, and that alludes to coming back in the spring, is really kind of see where we are from an expenditure standpoint against that $109 million as we would start to think about the next bond. Public engagement and what that timing looks like in terms of getting in front of the public, understanding the needs of the community as we think about what could start to make up the next bond. Thinking about a steering and advisory committee. With the Parks bond, I know they use the Parks, Recreation, and Greenway Advisory Board. Thinking about how we can leverage a group similar to that to help kind of with the community engagement and bringing the community to the table on those discussions. And then bond sizing. As you saw, it's kind of been inconsistent in terms of the sizing of the bonds, and what does that look like for the future will be a point of discussion. And then as relation to potential projects, we've got those deferred projects. We've got the Leesville Road B that could be under consideration, Marsh Creek, Trawick, and the West Street Extension South that design funding is still moving forward, but we don't have construction funding at this time for. General purpose lanes to support our BRT implementation on our southern and potentially western corridors. And then looking at some of those program areas, Vision Zero, sidewalks, our bikeway implementation, just to name a few of those. And so with that, that's the end of the presentation I've got, and certainly I'm here for any questions.
Do we have questions? Councilmember Harrison?
Yeah, thanks so much for this presentation. It's great to see where we've been. I'm curious if you could speak to the length of time that it's taken to get to some of these 2017 projects. Were there delays, probably, I'm guessing, because of COVID, or is this, typical in terms of what we should expect, how long it takes to get to these projects?
So certainly I would say COVID did have an impact on all of our schedules. And as it related to our staff resources, obviously resources available in the community, as well as just the availability to do work during that time. And then certainly I think some of the funding challenges and trying to see how a lot of that plays out, because that has a tremendous impact on what we can actually deliver. So I would say those are two of the biggest impacts we've had from a schedule standpoint. But certainly these projects are not the type that are going to be delivered quickly. I mean, I think the average is going to be somewhere in the 4 to 6 year range when you play through the visioning, getting a scope in place, getting the final engineering, real estate, and then construction. With our major road projects, you're typically going to be somewhere in the year, maybe plus range on real estate, and then you're looking at somewhere around 2 years on average for construction.
Okay. And when I think about, another bond, I feel like we've been talking about a bond in 2024. Does that feel doable, feasible, given where we are with capacity?
So I think certainly consideration, we know that we're going to be running out of money in some of our program areas. I think the challenge is going to be seeing what the response looked like for some of these larger bond projects and how quickly we can get those into construction. I think will be some of the factors that will influence those discussions moving forward.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilmember Black?
Hi, good afternoon. Hi, District A Councilor. So, my concern, I'm getting a lot around the Six Forks Road Corridor Plan. And so you talked a lot about specifically the engagement process that goes into the design part of the process. What's the process around engagement, like as things are being delayed or being drafted, or like the middle part of the process where we are now? Because a lot of people I'm asking this because a lot of people are like, what's happening? You've been waiting for a really long time and we don't know what's going on.
So certainly we try and make a concerted effort to stay engaged with the public throughout the process. As it relates to this stage of the process, typically, not withstanding any potential rescopings, we would be trying to do regular updates, videos that would kind of say, this is where we are with the project. This is what we can anticipate for the next, say, 3 months in terms of progress. I don't know that we've necessarily have been able to get to those as frequently as we would like to with some of the resource strains, but certainly that's the anticipation. As it relates to the rescoping, certainly as we're thinking through some of the considerations, especially on Six Forks, we are anticipating getting public feedback on that. Part of it's been trying to identify exactly what options we have that we can feasibly deliver.
And so with that public feedback process, when you're in this rescoping aspect of where we are, is that going to involve like just telling people kind of like what we can do and what we can't do, or like is it going to be like active participation in the design process?
So I think we would anticipate some active participation in that. What I would see is us leveraging a period, much like we do with our kind of pre-design and our design touch points, is we would put information out there on the web with relation to the options.
Okay.
And then certainly any opportunity we've got to do some of the in-person touch points with the community, we certainly want to welcome that.
Well, great. I look forward to having a deeper discussion specifically about Six Forks Road one next week. And also, I really like your bow tie.
Thank you.
Councilmember Patton, and then Jones.
Hi, thanks for being here. Couple from me. One, can we get a status update on Atlantic Avenue?
So I will need to defer to my partners in engineering services, specifically on Atlantic Avenue.
Okay.
That was one of my questions.
Good afternoon. I'm Sylvester Percival with Engineering Services, roadway design construction manager of that division. So we terminated our contract with J. Smith, the contractor. Currently, we are working on getting 2 contractors on board to help us maintain the corridor as we work towards, with the surety, bringing another contractor on board. We do have a proposal before us, and so we're hoping within the next couple of months to be able to finalize that process. More than likely, if we are able to finalize the process, we're thinking that we can keep construction moving early next year, say as of March.
That's when it would complete in March?
No, continue.
They would continue.
Yes.
They would pick it up in March. And then roughly how much work remains? Like when will it be complete, if that?
We're thinking about 18 months worth of work.
Okay, got it. So a year and a half from March.
Yes, ma'am.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Can I just follow up on that? You said March. Is there any way to accelerate that?
So because of the situation that we're in, bringing a new contractor on board, the surety being involved, utility relocation, private utility relocation taking place, the contractor that is more than likely going to be the one that will be coming on board has indicated that they will not, or would like not to come start the project until the utilities are mostly or all out of the way, private utilities that is. And so that time frame for completing the private utility relocation work is March of next year. And so more than likely that's
Okay,
what's
so you're
driving it.
waiting for that piece to be done?
Yes.
Got it,
Mayor.
okay.
Yes.
Anything else?
Yeah, back to Mr. Ritchie. I'm all done with Atlantic Academy. Thank you. So 2 questions. I'll give them to you both, and you can take them in any order. One, I hear a lot from my constituents around questions and needs that would be related to the NCDOT betterments grouping, just like bushes on medians that would otherwise not be there and stuff. So I'd love to hear a little bit about how, like the size of that bucket, how far it goes, how you decide which projects to better and which ones not. And then my second piece is around the sidewalk petition. I know that program's being reevaluated right now. I'm curious like how the conversations are going and if that would be anticipated to be folded into an upcoming bond. So those are the 2.
So I'll start with the NCDOT partnerships. So as part of the 17 bond, the NCDOT partnerships had 15 million that was dedicated to it. And really, any opportunity we've got to partner with NCDOT to look at betterments, we're going to. A lot of that does kind of hinge around really our pedestrian and multimodal facilities in a lot of cases with the department, just because their policies are different from ours. They look at a 5-foot sidewalk standard meeting their policies. Obviously, that is not consistent with our policies. So anytime we look at a wider sidewalk, that's going to be considered a betterment. And so that's really kind of a lot of what we see from a betterment standpoint. And then the corresponding real estate that may be additional real estate that may be required associated with that is a lot of it. But really, it's kind of as we get those opportunities, we're partnering with them. So there's not necessarily a delineation of this project gets it, this one doesn't. It's kind of looking on a case-by-case basis what opportunities we've got to really try and enhance the experience, especially promoting connectivity on some of these larger, and especially on the extremities of the city, how we promote connectivity there. And then as it relates to the neighborhood sidewalk petition, yes, we are anticipating that we will probably be coming to council whether late this year or early next, with an update. There was a strategic plan initiative that was looking at the petition process, and they are wrapping up their recommendations, and we do anticipate that coming forward for an update to council, and then consideration of further direction from there later this year or early next.
Any additional questions? Okay, Councilmember Jones?
Thank you. I had a question about, is the 2017 bond. So the only project to be canceled was Leesville Road, that's District E. So as we look towards going for the next bond, whatever we do, does that get priority? Does that get like first dibs, or how does that process work?
So ultimately, I don't know that there's necessarily a priority or first dibs. We'll kind of look at we'll look at our kind of prioritization formula, and we'll bring that result to the council for consideration, and then ultimately the identification of the exact projects that will end up on that bond package will be a conversation that we will have with the council at that time.
Got it.
So I wouldn't say yes just because it was canceled before that it's going to retain that priority. That it'll be part of the discussion.
Got it. That would be, just so I can make sure I understand what you're saying, even though it was already approved for the 2017, it would be a council and staff decision to see where it would fall on the priority list for the next bond.
Yeah, we will run it through our formula again, and then we'll bring that resulting list back to the council.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Any other questions? Okay, I have a couple. So Blount Person, I see, is still in design. Just for perspective, that's the first thing I worked on when I joined City Council in 2007. So I'm getting a little antsy. When are we thinking this is going to move forward?
So we're actively working on that. So the Wake Forest Road roundabout and that were kind of put together as one project. As we have been communicating with the community and working through some of the scoping on the two-way conversion portion of that, certainly there's been some issues that we've run into as it relates to the pros and cons and the trade-offs of the different modes. The Wake Forest Road roundabout portion of that, we are moving forward as we still consider the design for Blount Person. We're also in the midst right now of looking at some, because part of what we got from the South Park area was concerns with speed mitigation through that area, so we are looking at some signalization improvements that we're going to go ahead and move forward there to go ahead and try and get those improvements on the ground. We are looking at some things as it relates to Blount Person. We anticipate those coming forward here shortly because I, like you, want to see that project move forward.
Okay, thank you. And then my second question is in reference to the West Street extension. That was deferred. What are some of the implications of that?
So really the implications would be the timing of the connectivity underneath the rail. There is obviously a tremendous amount of development that's going on the south side of that extension right now. We have been coordinating heavily with them as it relates to this delivery. I think part of it for us too is the implications I don't think are as grand, because ultimately we're going to need a grant to be able to deliver that project fully. I think the last estimate we got to be able to build the project in total is somewhere in the $50 million range, because we're looking at, I think, 4 different structures to be able to go under the rail. And so we are going to need to look at a grant. And so we have been having some conversations with our partners at NCDOT and looking at different opportunities for grants for that. And so that will be an upcoming effort that we'll see with this project.
Great, thank you. Any additional questions? Okay, thank you so much,
Thank you.
Ken. Next, we have the affordable housing bond. Erica?
Hi, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Erica Brandt with Housing and Neighborhoods. I'm going to give an update today on the 2020 Affordable Housing Bond. We'll start with a little overview of the bond, then we'll go bucket by bucket and talk about spending and project updates, and then we'll look ahead for the next couple years to see what's to come for the bond. So to give a little history, voters passed the $80 million affordable housing bond in 2020. The support for the bond was pretty overwhelming. I think it was in the 70% type range, which is pretty unprecedented for a bond vote like that. And the idea behind the bond was to really target funds towards areas that are going to be impacted by public investment, such as the Wake Bus Rapid Transit or BRT corridors and other large public projects like Dix Park. So to achieve that end, funds were placed into several buckets that we'll kind of go step by step and talk about each one. The first is the public-private partnerships bucket, which was allocated $28 million. The rental development gap financing bucket was allocated $24 million. The transit-oriented site acquisition and preservation bucket got $16 million, and then the remaining $12 million was split between home buyer assistance and owner-occupied home repair. So to dive into an update on the spending of the bond to date, we'll start with the public-private partnerships bucket, which is the largest, the $28 million. This bucket was front-loaded. $12 million was made available in the first year of the bond, which was fiscal year 21-22, and then $4 million per year after that over the 5 years of the bond. And the focus was pretty broad, focusing on partnerships with nonprofits, trying to really get some deeper income targeting, a focus on 30% AMI units, and just more involvement from the nonprofit development side of the development community, rather than our kind of traditional development partners through the tax credit program. So to date, we've got $14 million that has been committed. $7 million is in the Kings Ridge project. $3 million is in the Healing Transitions shelter renovation. And then $4 million has been committed to small-scale projects, with $3.3 million going to Southeast Raleigh Promise and $700,000 to CASA's 601 Method Road project. And just for context, that $14 million that's committed is out of an $18 million that is currently available in the budget. So to take a closer look at each of these projects, Kings Ridge is 100 units. This is being built off of kind of the Sunnybrook Road area, developed by CASA, a local nonprofit affordable housing developer. And the goal of this project is really to provide housing for people who are exiting chronic homelessness, as well as for folks with barriers to accessing the traditional rental market, be it criminal history, low credit, or other barriers. So 50 of the units are being set aside for people experiencing homelessness, and the other 50 are for folks with those housing barriers.
Erica,
Yes.
I just wanted to add too, I think one of the things really important, support services are also going to be provided. And I think that that is key to helping people move out of homelessness. And it's one of the reasons why I really am deeply supportive of this project.
Absolutely, yeah. So CASA has a long-standing history of providing supportive housing, which does come with supportive services. They have a director who is on site at Kings Ridge who will be coordinating services as needed for residents. Great point, thank you. Healing Transitions is an organization that provides recovery and other services for men and women with substance use disorder. They've got both a men's kind of facility and a women's facility, and the bond funds are going toward the men's shelter campus expansion to help bring another 110 beds online. The Southeast Raleigh Promise small-scale project, this was part of the first kind of pilot that the city did of a small-scale rental development project, where we made bond funds available in conjunction with city-owned lots, scattered site lots throughout downtown. I believe it was about 20 to 30 lots total that were made available. Southeast Raleigh Promise is going to be developing 27 units on 10 of those lots, and it's a mix of duplexes, single-family homes, kind of townhome type model to try to get to that missing middle type housing typology rather than just single-family homes on each lot. So they're doing 27 units. As part of the pilot requirements, we asked that at least a third of the units be set aside at 30% AMI, which they're doing. They've got 10 units at 30% AMI, 4 at 60%, and 13 at 80% AMI. And just a note, I think as you all know, that deeper income targeting does come with kind of a trade-off, because The more affordable units are harder, they're more expensive to build and to operate, so there is a kind of greater per unit subsidy that we see in these smaller scale projects that have that deep income targeting. But another point too is that even though only 10 of these units are targeting that 30% AMI, all of the projects, all of the units will be accepting vouchers, so that's another way that we're creating access for lower income households who are in that 30 to 40% AMI range. And then the CASA project is another project that is coming through the small scale pilot. They actually have site control over their own property at 601 Method Road, so they're just using the bond funding but not the city-owned lots. And they will be developing 9 units there, so 8 of them are going to be targeted at 30% AMI. And this is really geared toward foster youth who are transitioning out of the foster care system. So 8 of those units will be for foster youth who will be connected to rent assistance through the Housing Authority. They have like a particular voucher program for foster youth exiting the system. And then 1 unit will be for a youth advisor on site.
That's awesome.
So here are some photos just to show some progress on the construction. You can see this is the Healing Transitions Men Campus from Lake Wheeler Road. This was taken a little while ago, so it probably looks pretty different now if you go down Lake Wheeler Road, but I think they've made a good bit of progress now on that shelter expansion. And then Kings Ridge is the second photograph here. You can see the site work that they've been working on over the spring and summer. So the next bucket I'll dive into is the rental development gap financing, which is $24 million. This is spaced out evenly over the 5 years, starting in fiscal year 21-22, so we are now in the third year of that, and it's $4.8 million per year. We are fully committed, to no one's surprise, through fiscal year 23-24, and we funded 4 projects here. We've got Milner Commons, which received $5.9 million. Parkside Apartments, which you all just approved funding for, I guess 2 meetings ago, $4.8 million from the bond, along with another 1.2-ish in local funds for the purchase of that land. And then Pines at Peach Road received $2.75 million from the bond, and another $2.25 million from other local funding sources, as well as Lake Haven, which is the only 9% project, tax credit project on here that got $950,000. So Milner Commons will create 156 units. Parkside Apartments is planned to be 144 units. Pines at Peach Road, 119 units. And Lake Haven is 56. And the image there just shows kind of the overall unit mix across those 4 projects. So you can see that the bulk of the units is at that 60% level, 310 units. Also quite a few units at the 50% AMI level, and then the rest are split between 30, 40, and 80. And just a note on the targeting of these funds, these are gap financing funds that are really reserved for projects that are adjacent to transit to kind of fulfill that mission of the bond funding. So these are projects that are within a half mile of planned bus rapid transit routes or existing bus stops that are served at least every 15 minutes. So Milner Commons is located on Newbern Avenue. It'll be right on the corridor. Parkside Apartments is just off of Western Boulevard. Pines at Peach Road is off the Southern BRT corridor, and then Lake Haven is off of Newbern. And there is a construction photo of Milner Commons. So the third bucket is the transit-oriented site acquisition and preservation. This was $16 million. I've kind of broken it out here into the 2 different purposes, which are related but a little bit distinct. On the preservation front, $4 million was invested into the county-wide Wake Affordable Housing Preservation Fund. So there's $4 million of the city's investment there from the bond, along with, I believe, $11 million from the county, and then some like 30 to 40 million of private equity. So all total, that preservation fund is capitalized at over $60 million. And then in addition to that, the city also did put $2 million of direct equity into the preservation of Grosvenor Gardens last fall. And then on the site acquisition front, we've got $2.9 million that went toward the acquisition of Zach's Grocery Mart over on Newbern. Avenue near the intersection with Raleigh Boulevard. There's $1.5 million for the purchase of 5508 Western Boulevard on the other end of the BRT corridor. And then real estate is currently in negotiation to add to that parcel with the two parcels behind the Western Boulevard parcel, 5511 and 5507 Hillsborough, for $2.5 million, which would create a total site size of around 4 acres, which would really help with the redevelopment potential. And so all of these sites will ultimately be put out for RFP. The city would retain ownership via long-term land lease and work with a developer to build affordable housing. And so on this front, we've got all 16 million is available, and 13 million of that has been committed to date. So there's about 3 million left for future acquisition. And here are some images of Grosvenor Gardens, a beautiful historic property there on Hillsborough Street. And Western Boulevard, not as beautiful, just a kind of vacant lot, but it'll hopefully look very different in a couple years once that redevelopment happens. So the final bucket I'll talk about is our home ownership programs, the home buyer assistance and home repair, which was capitalized at 12 million total. So these two are kind of the late starts in the game. Council just approved program designs for these two programs back last October, so about a year ago. And both programs are geared toward targeting investment into neighborhoods near the BRT. So on the homebuyer front, we've got the homebuyer assistance program, which essentially works the same as the citywide homebuyer assistance program. There's just an enhanced amount of funding available, and it does target those transit-adjacent neighborhoods. And then the home revitalization program is a little bit more distinct, so it's designed to kind of fill in the gaps around our existing home repair programs, which we have on the smaller dollar amount end, the limited repair program, which provides about $15,000 worth of assistance to owner-occupied home rehab to replace, a roof or an HVAC system, one or two kind of major systems that are failing. And then on the upper end, we've got the substantial homeowner rehab program, which does $90,000 to sometimes up to $100,000 worth of work to really do a comprehensive rehabilitation. So this program is sort of in between, originally envisioned to target the $30,000 kind of range and be flexible as well. So not only providing assistance to fix failing systems, but also just provide needed maintenance or accessibility modifications. So we have a map that's available online that shows kind of where the eligible areas are. You can type in an address and see if it falls within that area. It's got links to the pages that have information about both programs. And then here are just some photos of a home repair project that is in process through the home revitalization program. So to date, on the home buyer assistance front, we have closed 9 loans totaling $540,000. And we expect that for the total amount that's been budgeted, $6 million for this program, we expect that at the end of the day, 100 households will be served. The home revitalization program has had 11 loans closed to date, $430,000 total. And with that $6 million, we expect that 120 households will be served. So just keep in mind, with these numbers here, that on the home buyer front, this has only been in operation for about a year. And it was one of the more challenging years to date for our home buyer production, for sure. We saw really high home prices, rising interest rates. In total, only 16 home buyer loans, or actually, I think it was 9 last fiscal year were closed. So we have seen a big uptick just starting in this current fiscal year. Since July, we already have about 20 loans that are in the pipeline, which is pretty promising for things kind of looking up. And about half of those loans are using this enhanced program. The other half are through the citywide program. And then on the revitalization program front, it's really only been in operation for about 6 months. We went under contract in April. And then the first 2 months, our contracted program administrator, which is Rebuilding Together the Triangle, was really kind of building up the applicant pipeline. So it's been kind of like 4 months, I would say, that the program's really been operating. So in addition to these 11 loans that have been closed, There are actually more than 50 applicants that are in the pipeline with various stages kind of in the application process. So what is next? So we're currently in the third year of the bond. We have more than half of the total bond amount that's been spent or committed. And 78% of the available funds, so that's the funds that are currently available in the budget. So if you look at the 80 million overall, half has been spent or committed. And if you look at what's actually available currently in the third year, that's 78% has been spent or committed. And this just is a little bit of a breakdown by bucket. And so you can see clearly what funds are currently available in the budget versus the total funds in each bucket. So in total, a little over 42 million has been committed or spent out of the about 54.5 million that's currently available. And this is expected to produce over 800 units. You'll see that the site acquisition number on the unit count is a little tough because, you know, those are sites that are currently vacant that are going to be put out for RFP for redevelopment. So we have kind of a hard time estimating exactly how many units will be created at, say, you know, the Zach's Grocery parcel or the 5508 Western parcel, but certainly that number will skyrocket as those projects come online. And then just as an FYI, we actually do have a bond dashboard online that you can visit. We update it periodically. It shows kind of that breakdown that I just showed on the prior slide of the funds that are available and committed. And then it actually has projects mapped out by kind of the bond bucket type. And you can click on each of these little icons and see project details for each of them. So it tells you, you know, what the project is, the address, the developer, the unit count, and information like that. So looking forward to what is still to come in the next 2 years or so, 2.5 years of the bond. We've got 2 more rounds of the small scale rental pilot to go, and $8 million that remains unprogrammed that is budgeted but is not kind of designated for one of these purposes. So that still is kind of in the process of being figured out. On the rental development front, we've been fully committing our dollars every year, so we expect that the remaining amount of funds will be able to fund 2 or 3 more projects. Similarly, with the site acquisition and preservation, that remaining $3 million will probably fund 1 more acquisition. And then on the homeowner front, we expect to be able to assist about 90 more home buyers and about 110 more homeowners. And with that, I will take any questions.
Thank you, Erica. Councilmember Fort.
Thank you for the presentation. I've got a couple questions. I'll start with the homebuyer assistance and home repair. What type of communication are we using to push this out to the public to make sure people know that this program is available?
Yeah, great question. So our on the homebuyer assistance front, we're currently working through our kind of existing lender network. So the way that our citywide program is run, we work with a number of lenders who are approved to use our product. They're also well-versed in using other down payment assistance products that are available, like through the state, through Wake County, and other sources. So we have pushed out a lot of information to lenders. We do ongoing trainings every quarter to make sure that they're up to date on what's available, you know, where the homes have to be located to qualify and that sort of thing. We're doing a session actually at the State Housing Conference in 2 weeks about this program as well, to push the word out.
Have we considered using any other type of community engagement, working with realtors and some other folks who are probably more directly in contact with home buyers?
Yeah, good question. We don't currently work directly with realtors. We don't really have that pre-existing relationship, but a lot of the lenders that we work with do have realtors that they work with. But I think, yeah, I mean, in terms of making materials and communications available, that's certainly something we can make more of a push to do, for sure.
Okay. And then my other question is, you've got stuff in different buckets, and I'd imagine with the gap financing, a lot of projects were, you know, penciled out at a certain amount, and, you know, with material shortages and everything else. If we get other projects that come in and need gap funding, can money be shifted from some of these other buckets to that, since that's the only one that's exhausted, or are we just sort of out of luck?
That's a great question. I'm not really sure, to be honest. I don't know how like strict that design is in terms of what can be used for what. But that's something we can talk with finance about and try to find out more, because I think having that flexibility would be really helpful for sure.
Well, one thing, we have the penny, which brings in about is it 6 or 7 million? Over 7 million now. That's flexible and can be used for those projects. So I feel a little bit, I would have some heartburn about moving money because people approved the bond based on where those buckets were going. But I think that we need to encourage staff to look at how we get creative in using that 7 million a year that comes in from the penny.
Madam City Manager, get creative in figuring out how you said 7 million.
She always is. Yeah. Any other questions? Councilmember Patton?
Yes, hi, thanks for the presentation. Do you have an idea of when you think another housing bond will be appropriate?
I personally do not. I will say that we are certainly facing higher development costs, than we've seen historically, and we are feeling that in terms of the amount of. Usually, we have funds that kind of roll over, and we can commit to projects the next year. And this year, we will not really be in that situation. So, we are feeling the strain for sure.
Got it. Okay. Just looking at all my colleagues here, making sure we all heard that same thing. Another question I had was around the public-private partnership bucket. What we hear from members of the homeless community and our partners who serve the homelessness community is that there is this kind of missing type of service that might keep romantic couples together, or cohort groups, or people with pets together, and that there are a lot of, we have men's campuses and women's campuses, which is just not the only way that people group themselves out in the world. This might be a little outside of your lane, but I'm just curious if there's innovations happening in that space that we might be able to use some of this money to amplify new ways of providing homelessness services.
Yeah, that's a great question and a great thought, and definitely something that we can look into.
Okay, any additional questions? Councilmember Black, do you have a question?
Yeah, well, more of like a thought as I was listening to the questions, some of the things that you presented. Hi. So specifically with like the smaller scale development, I know we've had people who are reaching out to council about wanting to do like tiny home communities and do stuff like that. So like what is the best process to connect those people that have an interest in doing those things with you guys who are? Yeah, I mean, if you get correspondence like that, definitely let the department know, and we can add them to our list. We kind of like curate a list of developers who are doing work like that, and we'll make sure that they get notified when we put out our small scale NOFA so they can apply, and any other opportunities for development. Okay, thanks. That streamlines a lot of things for me. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, anything else? Erica, thank you, great work.
Thank you.
All right, next we have our Parks Bond update.
Good afternoon. I'm Xiaoxin Baker, Capital Project Superintendent with Raleigh Parks. And I'm here this afternoon to provide a brief update on the Parks Bond. And there are currently 2 Parks bonds actively being implemented on the table in 2014 and 2022. For the 2014 bond, there are over 70 projects and consisting of 20 single location projects and 10 programmatic projects, each of which includes somewhere between 3 to 8 projects. So out of the total, about 75 projects, we have completed 90% of them with just a small handful in final design, permitting, and construction phases. Now, 2022 bond, since even before the election day, staff across departments, including the city manager's office, have been working together to set a framework guiding the implementation process and communicating strategic focuses. And these strategic focuses include promote park equity and access in engaging community effectively and setting realistic expectations, incorporating sustainable practices such as EV charging stations and green stormwater infrastructure, fostering collaboration and partnership, both internally as well as external with public agencies and public partners, private partners, and ensuring timely project deliveries as well as fiscal stewardship. For example, staff will project cash flow as accurately as possible to assist with the bank anticipation note program. And we're also aiming at enhancing technology-based communication and reporting tools. And last but not the least, hopefully one of the long-term goals is to incorporate and repeat these enhanced practices for future bond implementation processes. This page is from the 2024 adopted budget book under the CIP section. As you see that 2/3 of the projects are receiving current funding from 2024 to support design services, with about 1/3 yet to come for FY25 and FY26. This is a summary spreadsheet showing the progress of these projects. You probably see this one a few times over the next few years with the green patch moving towards the lower right corner, showing progress. And in a bit further detail, Gibson Play Plaza at Dix Park, that will be the first one to be implemented, expecting completion early 2025. And we have Lake Whirler Road and multipurpose path improvement and Smoky Hollow Park and some partnership connection project at Crabtree Creek, as well as Strickland Road and Leesville Road currently under design. A handful of projects in planning phase: Fillmore Hills Tennis, and Green Road Park, Kyle Drive, News River Park Master Plan, as well as the Mine Creek Greenway improvement and the rest of the neighborhood and community connections, all in planning phase. For the rest of the projects supported by FY24 funding, they're currently under contract negotiation. We already completed the RFQ phase and completed the the consultant interview process, and we have preliminarily selected consultants and currently just negotiating contracts with them. And meanwhile, staff is actively pursuing grants and partnership opportunities. And community engagement. Staff has started the community engagement process following the guidelines as spelled out in the citywide public participation playbook. And here's just a quick reminder of the different pathways of the participation spectrum, including inform, consult, involve, and collaborate. Those are the 4 that we use primarily. And for the past 6 months, staff has completed situation assessments and demographic analysis and completed community advisory group. We call it CAG for short. You probably hear the acronym very often for the next few years. And we are evaluating and finalizing the CAG memberships and conducting stakeholder outreach and conducting early engagement. We have developed a project website for each of the projects, and we have recruited and secured some community connectors and marketing ambassadors to help with project information dissemination. And we're also currently preparing project information and online engagement portals. We have completed a couple, but still working on a number of them. So next steps, here are the immediate next steps. First, the CAG establishments through Parks Board and City Council. And we are currently executing contract with an engagement consultant. Between November and January 2024, you will see the consultant contracts coming to Council under the consent agenda. And you will also see a construction management risk contract to Council probably around February timeframe, and artist contract execution will be conducted around the same time as well. Before I open the floor up to questions, I would like to give a big shout out to some of the board members who have been involved very heavily with the early engagement process. And these boards include the Parks, Recreation, and Greenway Advisory Board, Public Art and Design Board, Historic Resources and Museum Advisory Board, and Community Engagement Board. I don't see any board members in the audience, but hopefully they're watching TV and can sense the appreciation in the air. And they have spent a lot of hours and late nights with us reviewing situation assessments and selecting the CAG members. And this is only the start, and there will be many, many more late nights to come for the next few years. And last, I would like to thank the district council members and providing their suggestions and input on the outreach effort during the CAG recruitment process as well. And with that, I'll take questions.
Okay, any questions? Councilmember Patton?
Hi, thanks for the presentation. Are all the CAGs selected now?
We're finalizing them. We're going to go through, there are 4 CAGs total, and 3 will be approved by the Parks Board, and 1 joint CAG for some complicated projects will come to council in November.
Okay, got it.
We'll have closed the online engagement portal if
Sure.
that's what you're asking.
That's fine. No, well, I know the board takes their work and their deliberations really seriously, as do you all. If there were still deliberations in progress, I just wanted to offer a request that they take a lot of care and in specific, being thoughtful about balancing representative interest groups versus representatives of individual citizen use of the park. But it sounds like the selections sounds like that train has left the station, so.
And that was part of the consideration too. We have spent a lot of late nights. And I understand you're the liaison, and if you come to the Parks Board meeting in October and November, you will see the presentation, how we selected these CAG members as well.
Cool, thanks.
Okay, any other questions? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're going to be busy, or continue to be
Already.
busy.
We're already
Yeah,
busy, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. That then concludes our work session. We'll be back here at 7 o'clock for public comment. Thank you.